died and whatever, then God will revive everybody. And the Zohar says that last part, Zuhi Tchiyat HaMetim, Shehi HaRefuah L'Shvorei Lev Al Metehem. This is the revival of all the hearts of all the people. So, Bonei Yerushalayim Tchila, the Zohar says, first Jerusalem has to be rebuilt. And other than the temple, thank God today Jerusalem is rebuilt. It's a major Jewish metropolis now. We just need the temple. But Bonei Yerushalayim Tchila is first. Ve'acharav Nidchei Yisrael ikanes. Then the ingathering of the exiles will be complete. And finally, Acharon al Hakol is the Tchiyat HaMetim. And when will Tchiyat HaMetim happen? 40 shana, 40 years after the Kibbutz Galuyot. Okay, so 40 years between Kibbutz Galuyot and Tchiyat HaMetim. And how do we know? It's based on, and then the whole Midrash HaNe'elam here is basing the events of the end of days on the life of Yitzchak. Just like it says, V'Yitzchak ben 40 shana. Yitzchak was 40 years old when he got married, and we're going to come back to that as well. Midrash HaNe'elam tells us the whole sequence of the end of days based on the life of Yitzchak. And we briefly spoke about this before because Yitzchak is literally, his name is Yitzchak. First of all, his name is in the future tense. It literally means he will laugh. Not tzachak, not that he laughed in the past, but Yitzchak, he will laugh. So it's already in the future tense, first of all. Second of all, the Torah tells us basically nothing about Yitzchak. Nothing. He doesn't even have a parsha to himself. There's a few parshas about Abraham. There's a few parshas about Yaakov, about Yosef. Everybody gets a whole bunch. Moshe gets a lot. Aaron, everybody, but Yitzchak doesn't even get one parsha to himself. It's like he's squeezed between Abraham and Yaakov. We know basically nothing about him, right? So Yitzchak is like concealed until the end of days. And the mystics and the Arizal says Yitzchak is literally, if you take those 4 letters, Yitzchak, it literally spells Ketz Chai, if you rearrange. It's an anagram. The letters of Yitzchak are an anagram of Ketz Chai, which means he lives at the end of days. So Yitzchak's job isn't done. The Torah says nothing about him because he didn't really do that. His job wasn't for then. His job was for the future. He's going to come back. And we mentioned this last time, that Yitzchak, even the Gematria of Yitzchak is Ben Yosef. Remember this? Yitzchak Gematria is 208. Ben Yosef is 208. Because Yitzchak was that prototypical Mashiach Ben Yosef that was willing to sacrifice himself. He came to the cusp of death, like Mashiach Ben Yosef, and was spared death at the last moment. So Yitzchak is really like the prototype model of Mashiach ben Yosef and the whole Geula process. So based on that, the Zohar has a whole sequence of events of how the redemption will come about. And the final step, at the very end of everything, is the resurrection 40 years after the ingathering of the exiles. The point is, this is the sequence of events. So we have the rebuilding of Jerusalem, the ingathering of the exiles, the resurrection of the dead. But who's supposed to facilitate the rebuilding of the temple, Jerusalem, and the ingathering of the exiles? Mashiach, which means, and this is before the resurrection of the dead, which means you can't argue that Mashiach can come from among the dead after the resurrection. It's not possible. Mashiach already has to be here before the resurrection of the dead. So that argument that, well, everybody resurrects, so this so-and-so who comes from the dead could be Mashiach, not possible, because Mashiach has to come first. So Mashiach has to come from the living. That's the idea, because he comes before the resurrection of the dead. Now, that brings us back to this whole resurrection idea. And Ephraim, and what do we do with this resurrecting Messiah? So what do we make of that passage at the end of the Talmud, in the Zohar, of Mashiach ben Yosef dying, and then there is this idea of being asked, he asks for life. King David asks for life. And interestingly enough, by the way, again, if you like Gematrias, the mathematical precision is everywhere. So the pasuk there, if you remember, God tells David, Sha'al mimeni, ask of me anything and I will give it to you. And then David says, what? In the verse, in the pasuk in Tehillim is, Chaim Sha'al mimcha. So the word that's used twice is Sha'al. God says, Sha'al mimeni, and King David says, Chaim Sha'al mimcha. And the Gematria of Sha'al is also 331. So it's like this number is in every place that's talking about Mashiach ben Yosef, resurrection, all that. It's always these same numbers. It's always that 331 number, another allusion. Okay, let's solve this issue. How do we make sense of this? Does Mashiach die or he doesn't die? Is there a resurrection or there isn't a resurrection? What do we do? Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David. How do we make sense of this? The key, I believe, is found in a beautiful midrash in Yalkut Shimoni. I've said before, I love this midrash because Yalkut Shimoni literally means, Yalkut means a collection putting together a bunch of things. Yalkut Shimoni was probably first published in the 11th century, and it was brought together Rosh al-Mashiach. This is the light of Mashiach. Shene'emar, vayar Elohim et ha'or ki tov. Because on day one of creation, remember there was that hidden light. We spoke about this in the Chanukah class, the light of creation. So on day one, God created light, and then on day 4, God created luminaries, me'orot. So what is the difference between the light of day 1 and the light of day 4? The light of day 1 was something special. It was a special divine light, the light of creation. The light that was all good. Vayar Elohim et ha'or ki tov. And we learn, Melamed shetzafa kadosh baruch hu bedoro shel Mashiach. So God looked ahead to the future, to the generation of Mashiach, uvema'asav kodem shenivra ha'olam. Before God even created the world, we already know the end was already set before the beginning. God looked ahead and saw the generation of Mashiach. And God hid that divine light of creation. On the first day, that special light, God hid it under his throne for the generation of Mashiach. Beautiful. So we already said before how also when we read there on the first day, Ruach Elohim merachefet al pnei hamayim, right? That the Spirit of God is hovering over the waters. We quoted the Midrash that says that Ruach Elohim was the soul of Mashiach, right? That was the Spirit of God. Already created the soul of Mashiach on day 1. Created the light of Mashiach and his generation on day 1 and hid it all away under his throne.